They say it's a small world, but I think the only people who say that are the ones who haven't seen much of it. There are 195 countries in the world, and I can confidently bet that not one person in here can name them all, including me. But if I've misspoken, I'll gladly allow any person in here to come up and prove me wrong. And then you can finish the speech for me. But even then, knowing them is incomparable to seeing them. I've traveled my entire life and plan to do so for the rest of my life. But I know I'll never get the chance to see everything. However, going to every country is a huge goal of mine. I have no memory of my first time out of the country. I have seen photos and heard stories, but don't remember one thought. I was only 1 year old, barely able to walk, but being taken 1,800 miles away from home. My parents took me to Guatemala so that the rest of my family could meet me for the first time. Since then, I've traveled to areas around South America, Europe, and Asia. This past year alone, I've been to 8 countries that I had never been to before, most of which were in Europe. I wish I could say that everything always goes to plan when I'm traveling, but rarely does everything work out perfectly. I could rant to you all day about how much I hate the Mexico City airport. It's the one place where I've ever missed one of my flights, and due to delayed arrivals, long immigration lines, and unreliable information, I was forced to wait an additional 9 hours until the next available flight. That was by far the most complications I've ever had on any of my trips, and this was when I was traveling to Argentina. And I know constantly moving from airport to airport and sitting in a plane for hours can be exhausting. But in my experience, it's usually the longer flights that are even more worthwhile. The best experience I've had abroad so far was early this summer when I traveled to Asia for the first time. While there, I attended a medical internship where I spent a month working at Alka Hospital in Kathmandu. It took a total of 30 hours to finally arrive in Nepal. Half of that was on a single flight. Luckily for me, I only had one layover that was in Qatar, a small country in the Middle East. The only problem was that layover was 10 hours. And throughout my time in Nepal, people would come and go, and I was living with as many as 10 other interns and volunteers at a time. Only a few of which were in the medical division, though. Some were in teaching, care, or disaster relief. For those of you who don't know, 5 years ago, Nepal experienced a devastating earthquake, and they still haven't recovered from the destruction. Many families were displaced from their homes and now only have a tent to cover their heads. The streets are polluted and the air is filled with dust, so at times it was hard to breathe as we were walking to the hospital. On average, I would spend about 50 hours a week working, and some days I wouldn't leave the hospital until 10 p.m. And though I could go into great detail about all my experience at the hospital, such as the departments I worked in, the patients I met, and the surgeries I assisted in, that's not really what I wanted this speech to be about. Though my time in Nepal hospitals taught me so much, it was really the time I spent in the streets that truly impacted me. For any of you who don't know me well, which is probably most all of you, I have been interested in photography for most of my life. So I would bring my camera wherever I went and try to capture what was truly happening at that very second. I would spend whatever free time I had with my camera on the streets, taking pictures of people and my environment. Lost track. So through that, I was able to see all the cultures that were made available. And 1 second. So, as I did just now, I would get lost a lot while I was in Nepal. Usually on a daily basis. So, but no matter where I went, I never felt out of place, even though I was on the other side of the world. My purpose is to explore. It's what I love and what I plan to do for the rest of my life. But I'm not here to try to convince any of you to travel the world or plan some spontaneous trip. All I want to do is show you what I love, and it's up to you to discover your passion and what you feel like you are meant to do. For me, it's not traveling I love. Traveling's tiring and honestly stressful at times. What I love is being submerged in something or somewhere I don't know, getting lost and developing new experiences. And my memories of my time abroad will be with me for the rest of my life. But when my memories begin to fade, I'll have my photography to look back on and remember that one insignificant detail that made the picture perfect. Thank you.